Hi there. My name is Alex Rowell, and I'll be walking you through the visual analysis of my final project on hedgehogs. First, I want to take a minute and show my models. For this course, we selected several professional infographics and mimicked different parts of them in order to make our final projects. The infographic on ducks is my color model, the one on cheetahs is my visual language model, the one on shoes is my typography model, and the graphic about Harvard is my layout model. Links to the sources of these models can be found on my Wix site, which I'll provide a link to at the end of this analysis, and I'll be going into more detail on each model as we go. My color model had several interesting features that I emulated in my final graphic. On the top right, I've included the color inventory, showing which colors appear in the relative amounts of each. If you look on the bottom right, you can see all the colors used are highly saturated and make up a complementary set of colors. That means they lie roughly opposite on the color wheel. These colors are all present in the full color duck photo, except the blue background, which is associated with water. Orange is used primarily as a highlight color, and all duck-based cutouts are encoded as black, while non-duck shapes are white. Other than the title, all text is white, but it is seen on a variety of different background colors. Overall, the graphic sets the tone of being simple but educational, as well as being fun. Here I will examine my emulation of my color model in my final graphic. I'm going to look at my emulation overall, and then discuss individual elements with strengths and weaknesses later. My title and background colors match with my model, and all text present on the graphic is white, except when used to highlight facts in the middle third of the graphic. I used orange both as a highlight and a header color similar to the model. I chose not to mimic the title color for my model because the association with water was not appropriate for hedgehogs. Next, here is my text model, which provided several quirks and challenges to my graphic. The most striking visual feature of this typography is the mix of an italic serif font with an all-caps sans serif font. For identity labels, which are labels that explain what a graphic represents, this model uses leader lines and proximity to establish the relationship between text and graphic. Upon analysis, I discovered that this model did not contain any axis labels, which show scale or units of a chart, or precision labels, which are specific numbers that indicate the value of a visual element. The fonts I chose to mimic my model were Avenir in bold for the sans serif and Garamond Pro in oblique for the serif. I emulated the use of mixed serif and sans serif in headers, as well as the use of all caps for identity labels and subheaders. My model did not include axis or precision labels, but both were necessary in my final graphic, so I used the sans serif font for these numbers. Like my model, I indicated association primarily through proximity. Also, I mimicked readability rules used by my model and avoided long lines of text. My visual language model had the biggest impact on the overall look and feel of my final design. The primary visual element in the model, the cheetah, has a sketched appearance, while other visual elements range from very simple icons to very realistic line drawings. The section headers have a brushed-on look to them and extend well beyond the text. Generally, shapes intended to be labels, like the horse and the greyhound icons, have a fill, with detail lines that blend into the background, while shapes intended to directly inform, like the paw prints, have an outline only. As you can see in the graphic, the background is yellow, with the only color being black. This leads to more in-depth encoding strategies than were seen in my color model, and striking the balance between these two models was one of my big challenges for my project. Emulation strengths and weaknesses will be discussed with individual displays, but here are some overall emulation strategies I used. The cheetah print along the top and bottom of my model didn't fit with my layout, because there's no white space at the top and bottom of my graphic, so I put a hedgehog-themed pattern on the top and bottom of the title bar. All headers in my graphic have the brushed-on line to match the model. Individual elements use text spacing and placement to form boxes around some content, creating divisions of content without lines. My sources and byline do not mimic my visual language, specifically because my layout model provided a place for them that fit better with the content I have, but there will be more on that later. Next, I'm going to talk about the different types of visual potential and how I use them in my infographic. These types are appearance, numbers, location, time, and relationships. I will also talk about the types of encoding, or making data into visual elements, that I used in my graphic. Appearance elements show you what something looks like, or explain what some part of an infographic is about. My infographic had several appearance elements, including the sketch of a hedgehog, icons representing years, weight, and litter size, the world map, and various icons relating to pop culture. As you can see, I have two different styles of hedgehog icons, the more detailed sketch and the profile view. Both of these appearance elements work by taking what a reader would be most familiar with about a hedgehog, the quills, and making them prominent. Here you can see these different elements and how they correspond to elements in my visual language model. You can also see from my color inventory that all colors present are in my color model, and in roughly the same amounts. One challenge I had with appearance elements was identifying why some shapes were filled and some were outlines. Generally, non-label appearance elements are outlined and labels have a fill. I chose not to follow that encoding specifically with the controller and book because I felt that the fill gave a better look to that element. This made these icons closer in line with my color model, but less aligned with my visual language. Numbers displays, as you might have guessed, show numbers. The most important thing in a numbers display is the encoding strategies. The first display uses a line chart, and the amount of searches is encoded using height, while the time is encoded across width. The second display uses icons to encode amounts, making it easier to compare two types of hedgehogs. Here you can see the examples from my visual language model that I designed my displays around. Some changes were necessary for the chart, such as using different colored lines for the different searches. The speed data in the model is straight, so dotted and dashed lines are easy to read. But with the spiky data in my graphic, dashed or dotted lines actually made understanding the data more challenging. So I encoded with color instead of with line style. Also, I needed a more detailed x-axis than my model, so I kept the labels minimal while still marking the necessary information. In the second display, I experimented and found that iconic comparison was more natural to my viewers than just a number. Because of this encoding, the icons went from being labels to being information, so I made them outlines instead of filled. Location displays translate a place on Earth to a place on the graphic. My display is a world map that shows both where hedgehogs are most popular in Google searches and where they actually live. This display has encoding in both position and color. I won't have a slide on emulation for this element because my visual language model doesn't have any location displays. However, I treated each country like a label, so I gave them a fill with an outline that matched the background. As for color, the middle three shades in the stepped gradient are not in my model. There were not enough colors in my model to make this map, so I set the high and low colors to ones that are present and generated the rest. Time displays can show sequence of events, magnitude, or patterns. This display is a timeline showing the appearances of hedgehogs in popular culture. It takes advantage of position encoding to show this sequence and also uses proximity to show which paw print or icon is connected to which fact. Again, there won't be an emulation slide as my visual language does not have a time display per se. However, all the arrows move left to right, so this left to right display follows that pattern. Also, I was able to include paw prints, which also appear in my visual language model. Relationship displays aim to show links between concepts. In this case, it is showing the relationship between hedgehogs and other members of the same order and family. Encoding appears both in the position of the ring and in the line thicknesses. The big weakness of this display is that the smallest circle is the largest group, which is counterintuitive. However, I tried to overcome this with clear labels and an explanatory paragraph. This display is based directly off the miles per hour marker in the cheetah display. There is not narrow because this infographic covers two species of hedgehogs. In this graphic, I broke an encoding rule of my color model and made a hedgehog icon white. I tried making the hedgehog both black and brown and did not find the results visually appealing, so I made it white so it wouldn't distract from the text. This graphic is the heaviest use of explanatory text and uses only the sans serif font, though the text in the circle is given more weight than the text outside. Now that we've looked at all the individual elements of my final graphic, I want to take some time and look at my layout model. It has several strategies that I emulated, and I want to discuss each of them. The top right image shows that my model has very little white space and that it has a very modular display. No elements cross over, and other than on the right side, the elements tend to be arranged to form visual boxes. The bottom left image shows the vertical alignment of elements, and the bottom right shows horizontal alignment. The graphic splits itself horizontally into thirds, with the middle third only aligning with the title in various spots. Horizontally, the middle third aligns very well with itself, and there's a sharp top line created with titles and labels. In my emulation, I aligned all the headers horizontally to match my layout model. I had fewer displays overall than my model, so some vertical alignment is missing because that space was used for a single element instead of two. I aligned the middle third elements with the title box similar to my model. I was able to put the map in the same place as my model, as well as spreading iconographic displays through the middle third of the graphic. Unity is when visual attributes are repeated across a graphic. In my graphic, I added several brown elements even though my color model only used the brown for the title. The shorter title bar in my graphic compared to my color model made the brown look out of place, So I took advantage of Unity and put brown elements throughout the graphic to create a sense that the brown belongs. Variety is variations in visual attributes like size, color, and shape. I added variety to my graphic primarily by using orange as a highlight, which can be seen in the map, the line graph, and as highlight facts in the middle displays. Creating a visual hierarchy involves varying the visual impact of displays in order to guide the reader's attention through the infographic. Much like my layout model, my graphic is a collection of facts that do not have a linear relationship. This gave me the freedom to not require a specific visual hierarchy. I did have to make some choices, like if I wanted my hedgehog sketch to be as prominent as it is in my visual language, or to occupy a smaller space. I chose the smaller space because I realized my map was a very prominent visual element and the first thing the reader notices. Much like my visual language's miles per hour graphic, my relationship display draws a lot of attention early. The bottom third of the graphic has similar visual weight throughout, though the icons in the timeline tend to pull people toward it and then they follow the end over to the searches graphic. I gave the middle third the smallest visual weight because it is mostly a collection of facts and isn't necessary for understanding the rest of the graphic. Thanks for watching this visual analysis of my final project. For additional information and a look at how the graphic evolved, you can head to the site listed at the bottom of this page.